Difference between @static method and @class method. What is the difference between a function decorated with @static method and one decorated with @class method?
A static method is a method that knows nothing about the class or instance it was called on. It just gets the arguments that were passed, no implicit first argument. A class method, on the other hand, is a method that gets passed the class it was called on, or the class of the instance it was called on, as first argument. This is useful when you want the method to be a factory for the class. Since it gets the actual class it was called on as first argument, you can always instantiate the right class, even when subclasses are involved. Observe for instance how dict.fromKeys, a class method, returns an instance of the subclass when called on a subclass.
Basically, @class method makes a method whose first argument is the class it's called from, rather than the class instance. @static method does not have any implicit arguments.
Maybe a bit of example code will help. Notice the difference in the call signatures of foo, class_foo, and static_foo. Below is the usual way an object instance calls a method. The object instance, A, is implicitly passed as the first argument. With class methods, the class of the object instance is implicitly passed as the first argument instead of self. You can also call class_foo using the class. In fact, if you define something to be a class method, it is probably because you intend to call it from the class rather than from a class instance. A .foo1 would have raised a type error, but a .class_foo1 works just fine. One use people have found for class methods is to create inheritable alternative constructors. With static methods, neither self, the object instance, nor CLS, the class, is implicitly passed as the first argument. They behave like plain functions except that you can call them from an instance or the class. Static methods are used to group functions, which have some logical connection with a class to the class. Foo is just a function, but when you call a .foo you don't just get the function. You get a partially applied version of the function with the object instance abound as the first argument to the function. Foo expects 2 arguments, while a .foo only expects 1 argument. A is bound to foo. That is what is meant by the term bound below. With a .class_foo, A is not bound to class_foo, rather the class A is bound to class_foo. Here, with a static method, even though it is a method, a .static_foo just returns a good Ole function with no arguments bound. Static_foo expects 1 argument, and a .static_foo expects 1 argument too. And of course the same thing happens when you call static_foo with the class A instead.
Official Python docs. @class method. A class method receives the class as implicit first argument, just like an instance method receives the instance. To declare a class method, use this idiom. The @class method form is a function decorator. See the description of function definitions in function definitions for details. It can be called either on the class, such as c.f, or on an instance, such as c.f. The instance is ignored except for its class. If a class method is called for a derived class, the derived class object is passed as the implied first argument. Class methods are different than C++ or Java static methods. If you want those, see static method in this section. @static method. A static method does not receive an implicit first argument. To declare a static method, use this idiom. The @static method form is a function decorator. See the description of function definitions in function definitions for details. It can be called either on the class, such as c.f, or on an instance, such as c.f. The instance is ignored except for its class.static methods in Python are similar to those found in Java or C++. For a more advanced concept, see class method in this section.
If you want to support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing.